They left their homeland to escape a curse, but the curse followed them home. The film opens with a television broadcast discussing the Korean War in 1950. At the same time, a quiet house is shown, where a young pregnant woman hides inside a narrow closet, holding her breath so she will not be heard, just as a man wearing a cowboy hat enters the room. What already feels unsettling quickly turns horrifying when the man witnesses a tragic moment in front of him, as a woman takes her own life by hanging herself. The shocking sight leaves the pregnant woman frozen in fear inside the closet, forcing herself to stay silent so her presence will not be discovered. The story then shifts to the present day at a university in America, where we are introduced to Sophie Park, a Korean-American young woman who has lived in the United States with her family since childhood and is now enrolling as a new student. On her first day on campus, she's approached by a Korean student who warmly invites her to join the Korean student community. But Sophie feels awkward because despite her Korean blood, she cannot speak Korean at all and barely knows anything about her heritage, so she politely declines the offer. Her plan to major in American history is cut short after she discovers the class has already reached its enrollment limit. Disappointed, Sophie returns to her dorm room and is eventually advised to choose another class instead, which leads her to enroll in 20th century Korean history as a replacement.
I'm sorry, it looks like it's full. This is what I have left that'll fit into your schedule.
Let's see. Anything here you might be interested in?
Inside her room, Sophie calls her mother and asks why she was never taught the Korean language or culture while growing up, only to learn that her mother was never taught either by Sophie's grandmother, and that even their Korean names were deliberately avoided for what was believed to be a safer future in America. During the call, Sophie hears her grandmother's voice in the background, clearly uncomfortable with the topic, hinting that something has long been kept hidden within the family.
So how was orientation? Feeling good about the new school?
Why didn't you guys ever teach me Korean?
Grandma wanted you to only have an American name. Grandma only spoke English to me when I was growing up.
Even Grandma changed her name to Hannah when she immigrated here.
Was that why you guys didn't give me a Korean name?
Who is that? You know
okay.
better. Let's talk about listen.
After the call ends, the calm atmosphere in Sophie's room suddenly feels strange when she notices water leaking from the ceiling, and as she tries to check where it is coming from, a knock at the door startles her. When she opens it, no one is there, and she closes it again, assuming someone is playing a prank. But moments later, the door opens by itself, revealing a young woman named Ari Han, who turns out to be her new roommate and classmate. The next day, Sophie attends her first class and meets the Korean student again, whose name is Brian Ko, along with other classmates including Kwon and Fiona Payek. Soon after, a Korean professor enters the room and begins introductions, revealing that Sophie is the only student without a Korean name, while the others all have one.
Hey, remember me?
Yo, yeah. I'm Brian, and as the student has already mentioned, he's Kwon.
Good morning, class. I am Professor Lee. Fiona Paik.
Present.
Becky Mitchell. Norman Lee. Amadou Dixon. Sophie Park.
That evening, Sophie goes out with her new friends to a bar to relax and spend time together, and in the laid-back atmosphere, Sophie honestly admits that she knows almost nothing about Korea except for one name she believes is her Korean name. She asks her friends to help translate it, but the moment the name is spoken, something strange happens as Sophie's phone suddenly reacts as if it has been electrically charged, creating an unsettling moment that no one can explain.
Could you guys help me translate something? It's my Korean name.
Park Ju-hyun.
Over the weekend, Sophie visits her grandmother's house, where her father and mother also live, and when her grandmother asks about her new campus life, Sophie shares how she was initially disappointed about not getting into the history class, but slowly felt better after becoming close with several Korean students. That connection sparks Sophie's growing interest in Korean culture, and even makes her want to start using her Korean name, but hearing this causes her grandmother to react strongly, becoming visibly angry, as if Sophie has unknowingly touched a secret she has been desperately trying to keep buried. Without offering any further explanation, her grandmother abruptly leaves the dining table, leaving Sophie confused and unsettled. After her grandmother walks away, Sophie's father hesitantly confirms that Sophie and every member of their family were indeed given Korean names at birth, but those names were deliberately never used. He admits that he cannot fully explain the reason behind it, as the decision had always come entirely from her grandmother. Sophie's mother then tries to soften the situation by explaining that her grandmother's reaction is most likely rooted in deep trauma from her youth when she experienced painful treatment during the Korean War, a memory that has stayed with her into adulthood. She asks Sophie to try to understand her grandmother's feelings.
Tell us about your new school. How is it, Sophie?
Actually, they're Korean.
Good for you.
I'm even considering going by my Korean name now.
You don't have a Korean name, Sophie?
I haven't seen her this bad.
Okay, we thought our side of the family, it was important for you to have. Grandma was an outcast when she was basically your age. Please go upstairs and apologize.
Following her mother's advice, Sophie eventually gathers the courage to approach her grandmother and apologize. During their conversation, her grandmother finally reveals part of her past, explaining that she intentionally brought Sophie's mother from Korea to America when she was still a child in order to protect the family from a curse that she believes has haunted their bloodline for generations. She even makes Sophie promise never to use her Korean name, insisting that it is the only way to keep them safe. Sophie, however, finds the explanation impossible to believe, and her disbelief quickly causes the tension to rise again until her grandmother loses control and reacts harshly. The confrontation deeply wounds Sophie, leaving her angry and hurt, and she decides to leave her grandmother's house that very night. Overwhelmed by emotion, Sophie drives aimlessly before stopping at a bar to calm herself down. After spending some time drinking, her attention is drawn to a man who has just entered and taken a seat nearby. Without realizing it, Sophie begins to watch him, especially after noticing that he appears to be Korean. Summoning a bit of courage, she approaches him and through a brief introduction learns that his name is Jun, who turns out to be a newcomer as well, much like herself. Their conversation flows naturally, making Sophie feel comfortable, and eventually the two leave the bar together. As her interest in Jun grows stronger, Sophie learns that his fluent English comes from having attended an international school, while Jun discovers that Sophie cannot speak Korean despite her heritage, prompting him to sincerely offer to help her learn the language.
I'm Jun.
Sophie,
Wait, you came from Korea?
can I get you a drink? If you're from Korea, how is your English so good?
Trust me. Attended international boarding schools my whole life.
Their warm conversation continues until they arrive outside Sophie's dorm, and before parting ways, Jun expresses his desire to see her again. Already falling for him, Sophie saves Jun's number on her phone without hesitation. The following day, Sophie and Jun meet again at a restaurant, marking the beginning of their romantic relationship. Their closeness quickly blossoms into affectionate moments, leading them to officially become a couple. Amid her happiness, Sophie reminds Jun of his promise to teach her Korean, and Jun agrees on one condition, that Sophie must first have a Korean name.
It's not too spicy for you?
You teach me Korean.
Really?
Yeah, I want to learn.
You need a Korean name.
I already have one.
What is it?
Maybe you'll find out.
A few days after they start dating, Sophie introduces Jun to her family, who warmly welcome him, especially her mother and father. During their conversation, it is revealed that Jun's ancestors came from Seoul, the same city where Sophie's grandmother was born. However, unlike the friendly reception from Sophie's parents, her grandmother stares at Jun with an unsettling intensity from the moment she sees him. Jun then presents a gift he brought for her grandmother, neatly placed inside a small box, but when the box is opened and its contents are revealed, her grandmother's reaction turns extreme. She screams hysterically at the sight of the beads inside, as if the object has awakened a long-buried trauma. Feeling deeply uncomfortable about what happened, Sophie steps outside to collect herself, and Jun follows her, trying to comfort her while asking her to be understanding of her grandmother's lingering past and quietly admitting that he himself carries a dark side that not many people know about.
Jun, nice to meet you. Mom, this is Sophie's boyfriend, Jun.
So I wanted to get you something from your homeland. 죄송해요, 할머니. Sophie, stop.
She thinks her family's cursed. She doesn't even want me to use my Korean name.
You still haven't told me what it is. I want to hear you say it.
Park Ju-hyun.
Several days after the incident at her grandmother's house, Sophie returns to her college routine as usual, though her thoughts remain consumed by Jun, who has not contacted her at all. During a lecture, she suddenly hears a whisper calling her name from behind, and when she turns to look, she sees her classmates behaving strangely, staring blankly as if something is terribly wrong. Moments later, Sophie jolts awake and realizes it was only a nightmare. She immediately reaches for her phone, hoping to find a message or missed call from Jun, but she is once again confronted with the painful reality that he has not reached out to her for days. Still shaken, Sophie gets out of bed and walks toward the bathroom to steady herself, but she abruptly stops when her foot accidentally steps on a shard of broken glass lying on the floor. One evening, trying to distract herself, Sophie goes to a karaoke bar with her friends. While casually scrolling through her phone, Ari playfully snaps a photo of Sophie and Kwon, but when she looks at the image more closely, she notices something unsettling, as Kwon's face appears blurred and obscured as though something invisible is covering it. The strange occurrences continue when Sophie, slightly affected by alcohol, suddenly becomes fixated on a television screen displaying what looks like her own reflection in an unfamiliar place, standing beside a man wearing a cowboy hat with his head lowered. As the man slowly lifts his face, Sophie is overwhelmed by a surge of fear, panicking and rushing to leave the place. Shortly afterwards, she receives a call from her mother informing her that she and Sophie's father are on their way to San Francisco for work, and during the conversation, her mother asks Sophie to check on her grandmother, who has not been in contact for some time. Just as Sophie arrives at her dorm room and is about to enter, her grandmother suddenly appears and startles her, urgently warning Sophie to be more careful. Without offering much explanation, her grandmother asks her to come to the house as if there is something important she needs to show her. When they arrive, Sophie immediately notices that the house looks dark and in disarray, as though something has disturbed the peace within it. Upon reaching the second floor of the dark and disordered house, her grandmother leads Sophie into a bedroom and hands her an old photograph, asking her to look at it carefully. In the photo, Sophie sees the image of a woman hanging, and with a heavy voice, her grandmother explains that the woman is her own mother, who took her own life at the beginning of the story when she was only 19 years old. On the night it happened, her grandmother had been hiding inside a closet while pregnant with Sophie's mother. With eyes still filled with trauma, her grandmother tells Sophie that all the strange events happening to her now began the moment Sophie's Korean name was spoken and shared, unknowingly opening the path for Jun to return. According to her grandmother, Jun is not an ordinary man, as Sophie believed, but an entity from the past who has come back carrying deep resentment toward their family bloodline. She then reveals a long-buried secret, explaining that several generations ago, one of their ancestors had been Jun's partner, but the relationship ended in betrayal when Jun's wife was discovered having an affair. The heartbreak drove Jun to take his own life, and from that moment on, his soul never found peace, transforming into a vengeful spirit, determined to seek revenge by targeting the women of their family generation after generation. The spirit does not merely haunt them, but slowly invades their minds, causing them to lose control of themselves until they are driven to end their own lives, because Jun believes that only in death can they become his companions in the afterlife. The curse eventually reached Sophie's great-grandmother, and during that time the terror she endured grew stronger each day. She began hearing whispers, sensing an unseen presence, and living under constant pressure that gradually eroded her sanity. Sophie's grandmother, who was still very young and pregnant at the time, could only watch as her mother deteriorated, until she finally chose to sacrifice herself in the hope that her death would appease June's rage and protect her daughter and unborn grandchild from becoming the next victims. However, the sacrifice did not completely break the curse, it merely delayed it. After that tragedy, her grandmother took her young daughter, Sophie's mother, and left Korea to settle in America under a new identity, believing that the only way June could track their descendants was through their Korean names. That is why she forbade everyone in the family from using their real names and tried to erase their past from the family records. But all those sacrifices feel meaningless now that the Korean name has been spoken again, allowing June to slowly return and enter Sophie's life. Having raised Sophie since she was a child, her grandmother knows when Sophie is lying and presses her to tell the truth, until Sophie finally admits that she did share the name in front of June. That confession only strengthens her grandmother's belief that June has already found them. She explains that the only possible way to stop June is to discover his real name, but even she does not know it, and there is no trace of June in their family history, as if his name had been deliberately erased from their lineage.
That boy you brought home, did you reveal your Korean name to him?
Yes.
My ancestor was June's bride. He found out that she was having an affair. He killed himself.
I'm so sorry, Grandma.
A ghost that sought revenge, driving the women to suicide for generations.
What can I do to stop him?
I was only 19 myself and heavily pregnant with your mother. Her suicide would appease his spirit. I left Korea with your mother and hid under a new name, finding his true name, helping him move on.
The next morning, while Sophie is out shopping, whispering voices call her name again, sending her mind further into chaos. The terror and hallucinations continue to escalate until she lashes out at a man wearing a cowboy hat, believing him to be Jun. Panicked and shaken, Sophie rushes home, only to be horrified by the sight of her grandmother lying unconscious on the floor. She immediately takes her grandmother to the hospital, and after medical treatment, the doctor explains that her grandmother has fallen into a coma and urges Sophie to contact her parents as soon as possible. Not long after, Jun suddenly appears before Sophie. Overwhelmed with guilt, Sophie apologizes for everything her family did in the past, including the decision to erase Jun's name from their family lineage. She begs him to stop the curse, but Jun coldly reveals that he desires only one thing, for Sophie to die so she can become his eternal companion in the afterlife. Despite the immense pressure, Sophie struggles to remain calm and ultimately agrees to his demand on the condition that Jun frees her family from the curse and grants her 48 hours so her parents can see her grandmother regain consciousness.
Your grandmother's health has declined rapidly. She may not have much time left. I recommend calling your parents.
I'm sorry my family erased you from our history.
I don't want her. I want you.
So let's make a deal. Please let her go. You release her from this, and I'll willingly sacrifice myself to you. Give me 48 hours. I want my parents here so she doesn't wake up alone.
When Sophie tries to call her mother, the number is unreachable, leaving her no choice but to send a voice message explaining that her grandmother is now in a coma at St. Julian Hospital. Desperate for answers, Sophie begins researching her family lineage by examining old historical documents, seeking help from her female professor who can read Korean, and explaining that this search is urgent because her grandmother may not have much time left, and the family's history has always been kept secret. From the records, the professor uncovers a tragic event dated October 13, 1902, when a member of Sophie's family ended his life at a power plant by electrocuting himself, his body later found submerged in water. After the incident, the family deliberately erased his name from the records, explaining why Jun's name never appeared in their family history. Determined to learn more, Sophie continues her search at the university library, even though it is closed for renovation, forcing her way inside to look through Korean historical archives from the 19th century. Ari soon arrives and offers to help since Sophie cannot read Korean, and together they finally uncover documents containing the name Yi Ji-won, revealed to be her grandmother's Korean name, along with evidence that their family was once wealthy and influential. As they attempt to dig deeper, the power suddenly goes out, plunging the room into darkness and panic. Sensing Jun's presence, Sophie urgently asks Ari to read the family names listed in the documents one by one. Several names are spoken, but all of them are wrong, allowing Jun's presence to draw closer, until Ari finally reads the name Chae Gang-il, which turns out to be Jun's real name, and in that moment, the entity disappears. Sophie rushes back to the hospital to see her grandmother, but Jun appears once again and declares that knowing his name alone is not enough to break the curse bound to their family bloodline. He then forces Sophie to go with him into the afterlife and hands her a knife, demanding that she end her own life. Before Sophie can do anything, her grandmother suddenly regains consciousness, grabs the knife, and slashes her own throat to save her granddaughter. Her sacrifice is made for the same reason her own mother once did, to delay the curse so it would not claim another generation. Although the act does not completely destroy the terror, it gives Sophie and her family time to leave that place and begin a new life under a different identity. After losing the grandmother who raised her since childhood, Sophie finally understands that the only way to survive is to follow the same path, walk away from the past, and protect her family's secret at all costs. Now Sophie carries the heavy responsibility of ensuring their real names are never spoken again, knowing that her family's safety depends on how well she keeps their identities hidden, and the story comes to an end.